sir.
Evening.
While waiting for General Dr. V.K. Singh, we'd like to have some input from your side, sir. You could.
No, let him come. You start, then we will join. Now we have to get more from our Patel and Sachin Garg are there to put us more on this subject.
Yeah. But they have got very limited time to speak.
And Tajul is also there.
Yeah, very limited time, but of course it is going to be around two hours program.
Let it be. Let it be. It's
Yeah.
better.
And we would like to hear from Mr. Rajiv Shah. He's a very recent experience holder in such investment. This thing. His own experience and how he.
I heard his father's valuation reports. Not only Rajiv Shah, his father is still more good. Now he is trying to do his best, Rajiv Shah.
And of course, our David Pannaji is they are all polished, I would say, eminent valuers. So today's session should be very interesting and knowledge sharing. Our purpose, what our purpose should be fulfilled.
Not only that, Vinay, it's important for this day, particularly for the economy purposes. This investment is important for everything, and today's topic is really worth, and people should aware and how to do it, what to do it, and everything is important. Everything is important here.
Yeah, for our valuers also, some fraternity, they should know about now this disinvestment program.
Definitely.
Extensively, government is very serious about. So they all should be. Start our program, and other participants are also joining. Oh. Welcome, General sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all?
Good afternoon, General sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Nice to see you again, sir. Thanks a
All
lot.
well. You tell us as to how things are.
Things are fine, sir. Things are fine. So, can we start our session, sir?
Yes, you are most welcome.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So, good afternoon, gentlemen. I would like to present my sincere gratitude to our chief guest, General Dr. Vijay Kumar Singh, Honorable Minister of State for Ministry of Civil Aviation and Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, for giving his valuable time to address the webinar on valuation under disinvestment, the potential avenues for valuers, organized jointly by Institution of Valuers and IOV Registered Valuer Foundation. I would also like to warmly welcome our eminent experts for today's webinar. The list includes Dr. Nauran Sani, whole-time member, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, who is going to join soon. He had some important, somewhere he was stuck. So he will be joining soon. And Mr. Rajiv R. Shah, Managing Director and CEO of RBSA Advisors. Mr. P.K. Thyagarajan, our President, Institution of Valuers. Mr. R.K. Patel, our council member and chairing the monitoring committee of IOV, and Mr. Sachin Garg, Managing Partner, GAA Advisory. Mr. David Panna, Partner, Deloitte LLP, and Mr. Tanuj Kumar, Council Member, IOV, and Governing Board Member of IOV RBF. We welcome all here to participate in this webinar, and all participants in this webinar are most welcome. So we are celebrating Valuers Week on the occasion of our 52nd Valuers Day on 2nd October, which is the day when Institution of Valuers was formed in 1968. With the formation of IOV, Foundation for Emergence of Valuation as a Profession happened in India for the first time. During the entire period of more than 52 years since the inception of IOV, the Valuers Fraternity has been celebrating the same with enthusiasm and fervor, with an aim of inclusive approach to share and updation of knowledge. IOV Registered Valuer Foundation, promoted by IOV, is also the largest, prestigious, and most engaging registered valuers organization registered with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, that is IBBI. It aims to provide structured education and training to bring in evaluation discernment in the overall hierarchy of Indian economy. Valuation as a profession has started attaining its well-deserved status by getting into the league of other leading professions. It is due to the nature of this profession which prompts the acquisition of comprehensive knowledge, including all other professional attributes varying from technical, financial, legal, and sociological studies. Due to this aspect, the profession is in much more fluid state than any other profession, thereby requiring a continuous and steady updation of knowledge in all concerned fields. Apart from the business needs of valuation, there are also other new venues for the valuers, such as disinvestment. The Indian government is pushing towards asset monetization by privatizing PSUs to fulfill its commitment of monetization and modernization. PSU disinvestment, as per the government's announcement, at attractive prices to retail investors would ensure a strong message to the community about the government's resolve to continue with reforms. For this process, government is regularly requiring valuation services of reputed asset valuers for assisting in the process of strategic disinvestment. Such asset valuers are required to have professional affiliation with IOV along with other regulatory bodies. IOV on its part has always been indulging extensively in capacity building measures, especially the bridging and specializing short-term courses it holds. In its this venture of capacity building measures, we organize number of seminars throughout the years, and this practice has been going on for last 50 years. And the fellowship and other membership certificates are issued by IOV, along with the holding of examinations in all classes of assets. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, several bridging and specializing courses, and of course, elementary training courses from graduate and higher secondary students even, to make aware of this profession. And now the advocacy is another part, and this is today's subject of avenues, potential avenues in disinvestment, is a move towards the advocacy part, and to inform and to make aware the stakeholders, all stakeholders, about the valuation as a profession on which reliability and competency is the main ingredient of this profession. So moving ahead, I would like now, would not like to take much of the time. I would like to introduce our chief guest, General V.K. Singh, a former 4-star general in the Indian Army. He is the current Minister of State in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and Ministry of Civil Aviation. He previously served as Minister of State for External Affairs, Minister of State Independent Charge for Development of the Northeastern Region, and Minister of State for Statistics and Program Implementation. During his military career, he served as the 24th Chief of the Army Staff from 2010 to 2012. He has written an autobiography called Courage and Conviction. I think there's a lot to say about Jannah Sahab, but time is short, so I've just given a brief description. But above all, when I met Dr. Jannah Sahab, I found him a very humble and non-political kind of a person, a very humble and very gentle person in personality, and the way he treated us was unforgettable. So, sir, it is really an honor for us that you are with us for sharing your experiences or your knowledge and your vast life experience as well. So, can I request you to come and address this gathering for your views? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Goelji. It is a pleasure to be amongst you. Organization which, when he came and met me, I asked him, do you have an organization called Association of Valuers? And he said, well, we do. The Institution of Valuers exists. And we got talking about what it was all about. Anything which is important, anything which is not important needs value. In the sense that valuer has to tell you how important it is. It is only a valuer who can tell you whether the diamond that you have bought is actually worth it or it is just a piece of stone. That's the value provided by the valuers. And what I'm happy about is that as I spoke to him, I learned much more as to where all your association, your organization has reached. Because each and every aspect requires somebody who should be able to correctly value it so that you know exactly how to use it, how to sell it, how to buy it, what is the right way to go about it. All these only come if you have the right advice from a valuer. And in this day of technology, when everybody thinks that the Google will answer, I don't think they can answer what valuation a valuer will give you, because it is his experience, it is the knowledge acquired over a period of time, which supplements the technology that is used. I mean, again, giving you the example of a diamond, you can find the clarity, you can find the weight, you can find everything. But what is the market value? Only a valuer will tell you. Nobody else can tell you that. So it is a very important aspect that has come about. And I think as time has progressed, so have your challenges. Your challenges have become bigger and bigger because the technology has come in. Everybody wants to use technology. A lot of data exists. What do you do about it? And let's apply to few things where disinvestment and investments are concerned. Long time back, if you all recall, Hindustan Zinc Limited was disinvested by the government of India. It was a strategic concern. It was profit-making concern. And yet the government of India at that particular period of time thought that it is not giving the type of advantage that they would like to have both in monetary terms and otherwise. However, there were other people who persuaded them that, look here, since it is a strategic concern, retain a foot into it. So I think they retained about 26% or something. Had they utilized the valuers, they would have told the people at that time, this is a wrong decision to disinvest a company which over a period of time will make money. All that it requires is better management. Because that's also part of your valuation, because you are telling them, look here, this company has gone into a tailspin because you put managers who cannot manage it properly. But if they were to manage it, the asset value is such that it will only soar. And it went to Vedanta, Anil Agarwal. And you'll be surprised. I think 4 or 5 years back, that 26% was far more than what they sold it for. That 26% was far more than what they thought were their debts at that time. It was far more than that. And it is today one of the major profit-making ventures of Vedanta. 99% of India's silver is extracted by Hindustan Zinc Limited. Now, I don't think you people had marketed yourself well at that time. Maybe if you had marketed yourself well at that time, somebody would have taken your assistance. Somebody would have asked you as to what can be done, what could be the options with the type of value that you attach to it. Because then only can a disinvestment become profitable. Disinvestment on the mode of panic selling is not worth it. And you require, that is why I think the backbone support of valuers is required in every possible sector that exists. And I'm sure you all are also acquiring expertise to deal with whatever is available, whether it is in the digital world, whether it is in the physical thing, whether it is happening elsewhere. I won't be surprised that a time will come when you will be able to tell any concern that, look here, the value of your concern is so much, but the value of your human resource is very poor or very good, or you need to improve it. I think these course corrections are also important part of valuation. And I sincerely feel that as an organization, as you grow, there is a lot that the institution of valuers can do, has achieved, and there are many more citadels left to conquer in terms of how you can make your presence felt. People who deal with you know about you. People who don't deal with you, who do not disinvest or buy big concerns, or I think you are still in that little shadow which does not allow people to know so much about you. My second piece of advice would be, do market yourself. Do attach a value to the valuation that you do. Let people know what you can do, what you can achieve, what assistance you can provide in ensuring that whatever field that a person is in can get the worthwhile results for whatever he's trying, whether he's investing, whether he's disinvesting, whether he is trying to trade that with something else. I think valuation would be needed everywhere. And in this era today of digitization, marketing is easier. You don't have to really go about, because most of the time when you pass by a bus stand or a railway station, you find 60% of people glued to their mobile screens. Data is cheap. Everybody is looking at it. I think it is possible for you to market yourself in a manner in which everybody utilizes you, including the digital field itself. There are many things that are happening in the digital field where valuation needs to be done, whether this data is worth it or not. I mean, a particular department of government is collecting data and data and data and data, while everybody says that data is the future oil or oil of today, but we don't know what to do with that data. Can we value it? I'm sure we can. You have the expertise based on both technology as well as your own experience. You can always tell them, look here, your data is actually worth so much so if you were to utilize it in this particular manner. I think it'll make a lot of value addition to whatever that government department wants to do. I can actually go on to find many areas which need your help and assistance, many areas which require you to engage in. All that I would like to say is that there are a couple of things which are already ingrained as part of your uh, acumen and business. One is you'll successful if there is a great amount of integrity in what you do. People will value you more if they know that the advice that you are giving is flawless. It can be relied on. There is no doubt on integrity that can be placed. You are not up there for sale. You are there for sound advice which a person will get. And the second is, whatever you do, a lot of times what happens is we all in various organizations give our advice, do our work like you do, you value a thing. I think like what prevails has started now because we took it from the West, where a doctor, when he starts checking you up, he tells you, you have got this, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E with you. I think you need to also tell your customer, look here, this is what I have done. This is the value attached to this, but you will actually get the value if you do A, B, C, D. Or you want to increase the value, you should do so and so. I think you'll find that your success will become much more. I can only say that calling on me on this webinar is, I feel very privileged. And like I confessed, I actually didn't know that there was a institution of valuers which existed in India. One always thought that these are all organizations which are abroad, but you are a very old organization. So pardon my, knowledge on this subject, because I suppose in the army you never dealt with valuers. So I think that's probably the reason. But now that I know about you, it will always be a pleasure to find out as to what you are doing, what is new that you are thinking about, what new methodologies you are adopting, and to know how fast you are climbing up to become a very important ingredient of whatever business a person must get into. So with these words, thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, General Sahab. Your motivations to the valuers, your advices on the how to promote the valuation profession, and of course IOV is indulging as a briefed also, and the way you have presented a third view, I would say, on the subject valuation is really marvelous, and it's really motivating for all of us. All present here would take your advice for the best for themselves. Thank you very much, General Sahab. Thank you again. Thanks
Thank you very much once again.
Sharing so much of precious of time. You are so busy.
Thank you very
but
much.
I know you took so much of pains to be here. Thank you. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now this webinar is split into two sessions. The one is the role of valuation in disinvestment projects in achieving $5 trillion economy. That is one where we have with us Dr. Naurang Saini, who's a whole-time member, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Dr. Naurang Saini has, thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us and sparing your precious time. Dr. Naurang Saini has served the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in various capacities. His last assignment was as Director General in the rank of Additional Secretary at the Ministry. During his tenure as Registrar of Companies, Delhi and Haryana, Dr. Saini implemented the first mission mode e-governance project in the country, MCA 21, as a major pilot project. He also served as a commissioned officer in Territorial Army from July 1985 to March 2011 and superannuated as Lieutenant Colonel. So, General Sahab, we have another army man in our gallery of speakers. I welcome Dr. Navraj Saini and would like to hear his views as he is an expert in the values rules and the 2017. He is from all these rules. He during the first in roundtable conference in October 2017, if I remember distinctly, Dr. Sab and Dr. Sani, sir, and till date, he has been into this at the forbearance in this profession. So I welcome and invite Dr. Sani to say a few words, share his views with us. Sir. Thank you, Dr. Sani.
Thank you, Goel sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining this webinar. General V.K. Singh, Mr. P.K. Thiagarajan, Mr. Goel, Mr. Shah, Mr. Garg, Mr. Patel, Mr. Panna, other eminent speakers and participants, good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to convey my thanks to Mr. Goel for inviting me to speak in this seminar. So first of all, I would like to take excuse of Mr. Goel to be very brief because of the other comments and of course excuse from General V.K. Singh also for this thing. So sir, thank you very much and thank you Goel sir. So market, we all know that market needs valuations of assets to facilitate a variety of transactions. Various laws, maybe Companies Act, maybe IBC, and other authorities in India require valuation of assets for different purposes and prescribe the manner of such valuation. For example, in the corporate insolvency resolution process, or we call it briefly CIRP, under the IBC 2016, envisages estimation of fair value and liquidation value. These are the two words, fair value and liquidation value of the assets of the corporate debtor. And valuers know it very well that giving valuation for both the things is very important, because fair value is considered if it's appropriate for fetching a very good price for the CIRP process, and liquidation value, of course, to fetch a price for realization of the assets, and of course then to distribute amongst the stakeholders as per the waterfall mechanism provided in section 53 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. These values serve as reference for evaluation of choices, including liquidation and selection of the choice that decides the fate of the corporate debtor and consequently of the stakeholders. A valuer has an important responsibility. He must estimate value which is more authentic than price. He must possess the required capability and integrity for the job. We all are aware that until notification of the company's registered valuers and valuation rules 2017 on 18th of October 2017, valuation profession in India was not regulated. Of course, there were societies, the Goel Service here, and there were various organizations also. They were having members, and their members were conducting valuations under the different laws of the country. In 2017, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India was designated as authority under the Companies Registered Valuers and Valuation Rules 2017 for regulation and development of the profession of valuers in the country. For sale of an asset by way of disinvestment or otherwise, valuation is very much required. With respect to transactions undertaken as per the respective policy, selection of strategic buyer and determination of sale price is made through the approved process of competitive bidding, where the bid price is compared against a reserve price, which is determined based on independent valuation by the professional agencies and kept confidential. So confidential word, since I have used, it's very important. And we have actually read in media also that in one of the big corporate, that the CIRP process, there are news that the valuation value has not been kept confidential, or there may be leakage also. We are not aware whether it is correct or not, but these are the reports. So why I have told you that confidentiality is the first and foremost duty of a valuer, and he has to keep that. And of course, the IRP or RP has also to keep the information very confidential. Professional agencies are engaged as asset valuer for valuation of the organization. Business valuation of an organization on a going concern basis and liquidation value of the assets of the same are calculated. This business valuation and asset valuation forms the basis for fixation of reserve price. The Indian business valuation industry is stated to grow significantly, especially domestically, given the acceptance of IFRS and fair value reporting in India, as well as in the global markets. The valuation of distressed assets, startups, among others, is emerging. Thus, valuers are important to achieve objectives such as improved value realization, timely sale, transparency and integrity of process, and maintaining confidence in the process. We all know that presently there is no legal requirement to be a registered valuer with IBBI to perform disinvestment related services. However, gradually, as the market develops, scope of functions to be performed by registered valuers are bound to rise. I would like to intimate that the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India has been receiving references from government authorities to recommend valuer for valuation related assignments among valuers registered with us. This indicated that the growing market confidence on registered valuers is rising. I would like to say that registered valuers should consider valuation assignments received from the government specifically not only as professional duties but also as national duty, because money raised through this investment in public money and will contribute in achieving the social goals. At the end, I will urge you to conduct the assessment while following ethics. People will value you in long term if you create a confidence and trust amongst the person who gives an assignment to all of you. So thank you very much, Goel Chab. Thank you very much for inviting me in this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sab. Thanks for your advice, and thanks for your advices like awareness in valuers to be raised, the awareness level about their duties toward the nation as well, not only for the stakeholders, but the nation as well. It's a very vital point you have raised, because it is our valuers' duty to provide the government the right kind of input where the such kind of transactions where disinvestment is concerned. The confidence of the other stakeholders and the government is raised. Thanks for reminding, and thanks for your just a very simple description of the rules and the regulations in with the valuers as such. And the valuation profession is really been benefited by the introduction of IBBI. I can easily say, because I'm rightly concerned with the whole system. I think it has raised our levels to beyond our imagination some 4 years or 5 years ago. Now, I would like Mr. Rajiv Shah to proceed with his advices. Let me introduce Mr. Rajiv Shah.
Goel sir, may I permitted to leave?
Sir,
Sir, may I permitted to leave, sir?
General Sahab will give the permission, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm taking permission from you, sir.
Please do.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
It was nice
Thanks.
to hear you.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saini. And you can understand I am in no position to say anything in presence of General Sahab.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Rajiv Shah, Managing Director and CEO of RBSA Advisors. He requires not much of introduction in our valuation circles. But anyway, I have to, just a brief introduction I have to give. Welcome, Rajiv. And a leading independent transaction advisory firm with service offerings including valuation, investment banking, restructuring, due diligence, transaction tax, risk advisory, and litigation support. He has already been involved with some of the major mergers and acquisitions engagements in India, as well as the major disinvestment and privatization assignments on behalf of Government of India. Rajiv Shah ji, you are going to be an inspiration for our younger generation in resolving all such cases. And I think it's the right time to hear you just on the threshold of one of your projects in OPING, I would say. Not have done, but I know very well what is the seat. So please give us our entire fraternities would be eager to hear you from you regarding your experiences in this investment. Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Goel sir, Mr. Tyagarajan, Patel sir, Sachin and David. Hi, David. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this. So disinvestment as a valuation related matters is very dear to my heart. It is I'm a practitioner, so I will speak like a practitioner because there are about 350 fellow professionals. And I would like to share my experiences with them. Sir, interestingly, I wear both the hats. I've done several valuations for disinvestment, and as well as I'm transaction advisors on many cases like shipping and NAPCO and all. So I understand, hopefully, perspectives which a deal maker, transaction advisor would need and what a valuation professional would need, sir. So winning a valuation mandate for disinvestment is a happy situation. Everyone should aspire to do it. It is wonderful. It's quite an experience. It is quite thrilling. It is quite exciting. It invites all sort of positive energy, a lot of positive attention. The way our country is, the way media is, there's a lot of bias towards learning more about what government is doing, what transactions are happening. So naturally, professionally, it is very, very good thing to win disinvestment mandates. At the same time, my only thought and suggestion is that people who aspire to do that should be aware of there are certain cautions and risks involved, which I thought it is important for me to highlight while people are aspiring to go in that direction. Sir, as valuation is required for disinvestment, essentially there are 4 methods under which valuation is to be done. My colleagues, I think the next session would be dealing more on the methods of valuation. So essentially there is a financial valuation of business by comparable companies, transaction approach or discounted cash flow. And there is one method which is for asset valuers, which is the net asset value. So these are the 4 methods by which valuation has to be done. 3 of them are done by transaction advisors themselves, and only 1 method is done by asset valuer. Essentially, all the 4 methods have to be combined together and to be considered by what we call the IMG, Interministerial Group of Secretaries, who consider and fix up a reserve price. So while the transaction advisor would do the equity valuation or the enterprise valuation based on all the established methods, the asset valuer would do the asset valuation. Now, the typical case in India is that, public sector enterprises were created 50 years, 100 years back. they have always had efficiency issues. That is the reason for privatizing them. That is the reason, that's the main logic. If they were run wonderfully well, and if they were the most efficient, then there was no need to privatize them. Now, the need to privatize is because they are maybe less efficient than what a private enterprise could run. But these companies are very, very asset heavy. So while these are very low in efficiency, they are very, very high in assets. So there is what I call, these are asset heavy businesses. So there is a lot of non-productive real estate, there's non-productive assets which are there. So while the potential buyer would look at the earning capacity of the business, there is a need to look at the asset values which are happening, which are forming part of the transaction. So the role of asset valuer becomes very critical and very risky, because he has to, the earning capacity of these businesses is very, very low. Now it's a public knowledge, if you consider Bharat Earth Movers Limited, they have a land in Bangalore, which is in the heart of the city. If you look at Air India, they have Air India House. If you look at Shipping Corporation of India, they have the whole shipping house in Nariman Point. And there are multitudes of such examples wherein the asset value today could be significantly or disproportionately higher than what the earnings of these businesses are. So there is a dichotomy or a contrast between their earning capacity and their asset values. Now, this is a very, very source of a big risk to a valuer, because transactions, the potential buyer, when he's looking at a transaction, he's looking at earning capacity. When we are looking at Air India, we are looking at earning capacity of Air India. But when an asset valuer has to look at it, he has to look at the value of Air India House. Correct? So these are the things which one needs to be considered. And the transaction has to be considered in a way, and government also has to work on these transactions, the transaction advisor has to work, where the deal which has to be created has to hive off the non-core real estate. That is the policy decision which the government takes. They generally look to see the real estate which is non-productive or which the buyer is not willing to pay for. And it is essentially that those kinds of real estate are taken out of the deal, because buyer does not see value in that. He wants to run an airline, not get into a real estate business. So potential buyer does not have the ability and does not have the willingness to pay for real estate, whereas the government, being a fiduciary owner, cannot sell the real estate without asking for a fair price. So the best thing for them is to carve out the non-core real estate and to separate it out. And so each of these transactions which are being contemplated in disinvestment today, as a matter of policy, non-core assets of these PSUs which are going for disinvestment is hived off, it is separated, because we need to create a situation where the buyers see good value in these assets and the seller does not have to sell non-core real estate unnecessarily. So there is a balance between the fiduciary capacity and the economic logic. I hope you understand that, sir. Now, sir, considering that, the role of an asset valuer becomes very, very critical, because he's the conscious keeper, because the business may not generate the asset, business may not generate the cash flows, but it is the asset valuer who is actually the conscious keeper. His value is generally way off and much higher, could be very different than what a business value could be. So these are the contradictions which one has to balance and one needs to be conscious of when we are doing a valuation. So there are certain, but I must say the valuation mandates of disinvestments are very good. I think they attract a lot of attention. So if I evaluate these engagements from practitioners' perspective, I'll start with the positives and I'll start with some cautions, words of caution as well. The positive, as I said, it is wonderful to win them. It attracts a lot of media attention. It feels good, but it feels good for a few months only. It feels good for a few weeks only. Thereafter, you have to work on it for 2 years, 3 years. In Air India, we were appointed in 2017. 4 years, the team is working. So these are typically very long, drawn out engagements. All my valuer fellow friends should realize that they should have the wherewithal, the capacity, the patience, the working capital to last those 3 or 4 years. you are expected to give 1 crore bank guarantee, 50 lakhs bank guarantee for every engagement. So you should be willing and prepared to do that. So these are the challenges which are coming along the way. Also, I must say there are certain points, while it looks wonderful, but the volume of disinvestment cases is very small. In a year, there are hardly 2, 3, 4 engagements which happen. It is not that there are, like in bank valuation, there are like 5,000 valuations happening. In disinvestment cases, hardly in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 mandates would come in. And there is hyper competition between firms in those mandates. Now, I will give you, not for asset valuer, I'll give you example of transaction advisors. For IDBI Bank, KPMG has quoted 1 rupee as fees. For BPCL, Deloitte has quoted 1 rupee as fees as transaction advisor. For Ernst & Young, for Air India, the fee was 1 rupee. So valuers, if they want to win this, they should be willing to take this risk and take this financial, because they are gaining also in some sense. So these are the real practical issues that one should be prepared. Again, whatever these are the, where every practitioner should know. While the fee of valuer is not success-based and cannot be legally, the payment terms are success-based. The fee is not success-based, but you know, government, the way they articulate contracts, they will say, okay, the fee is payable. This fixed fee is payable. It is not success-linked, but it is payable only when the deal happens. So please bear that in mind, that people who aspire to get into this has to withstand these 3 or 4 years of uncertainty. The fee is generally very competitive. It includes all out-of-pocket expenditures, GST. The contracts are extremely one-sided. That's the tendency and the problem of dealing with government. All contracts that you have to sign are extremely one-sided. So they will not change comma or full stop also. And they would generally take a very maximalistic position as so far as forming a contract is concerned. So please, when you get into these engagements, you please bear all these things in mind. This is not the challenge. The biggest challenge here in this case is that because you are a conscious keeper, and these are very long-term decisions, these are exposed to what I call political risks. Because today, if you do a transaction, after a few years, if the government changes, then the first thing that you are called for is that no, these transactions were not done in a right manner. It is very, very easy to allege that the valuation theek nahi hua tha, this was not happening, because valuer is the softest target here. You have a big investment bank, you have all the government people, none of them who take any responsibility. They put all the responsibility on the advisors. So there are political risks when you do these things, because once a government changes after 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, it will, whether you have done everything right or you have not done everything wrong. Most of the people are doing everything right because they have their whole future ahead of them. But that is a question of proving it. The problem is the whole media and the public sensationalizes it a lot. The whole concept of disinvestment gets sensationalized. That one must be aware of. This sensationalization happens because of political opposition. This sensationalization happens because the employees, where the companies are being disinvested, are not happy. And it also gets sensationalized because of media. So these are the tendencies that one needs to be aware of. Everyone is very easy to aware, whether they know anything about it or not, that it is everyone is selling family silver at throwaway price. Has no one even studied that company? Have they even opened the first page of tender before making that allegation? So you will be prepared to make such allegations. Be prepared to face all this. Correct? And that is why these are very, very high risk engagements. The risk reward ratio is extremely adverse. While the attention and the accolades one can get, but the risk reward ratio is extremely adverse so far as valuer is concerned, because he is the sole conscious keeper. He is the weakest link financially the weakest in the whole universe is the valuer in this situation. And if I can use the word, he's the murga in the whole game. So please be aware of when you are taking valuation engagements for this investment. It needs to be done. People who are doing it are keeping, they have to be conscious of all these things when they are dealing with this. If I can, he's the softest target in the chain. And because you all are my fellow professionals, I have to be as honest as I can be and dead honest. And these are the words which I say in front of government also. So rest assured, there is nothing that I'm saying which I'm not saying publicly. Again, as you know, these are right now, Rashtriya Ispat Nigam is being privatized. Now all the employees are up in arms. Ki bhai, hamara, you are selling family silver, Vishakhapatnam, all the employees are, they don't. So you will have to face all these allegations, you will have to face all these protests and all things. And everyone will say, valuer has not done. Now the bad thing about real estate in India is that everyone has an opinion. Every person, whether he's qualified or non-qualified employees, and they will make exaggerated claims of value. Everyone claims exaggerated claims of the asset value. They don't understand the liabilities associated with the transaction. Correct? And it is easy to sensationalize such claims. My dear valuer friends, please be aware of all this once you take these engagements. These engagements, given the risk associated with it, requires constant senior level attention. If you leave it for your juniors to perform, you have a potential of being in deep trouble. As I said, these are long drawn out engagements. 2 years is a minimum, I'm saying 2 to 4 years. Correct? So the 4 engagements which are going on right now, Bharat Earth Movers, the appointment happened in 2017. Bank guarantees, EIMDs were given in 2017. Till 2021, not a single rupee has come to any of the valuers. So that we must be aware of that. Again, as I said, these are competitive fee engagements. While it gives you a lot of thrill and excitement, this thrill and excitement can be of a very different kind also. So please do it well. Please do it, but do it well. Be mentally prepared for doing all this. Again, there is a point that there are high entry barriers. There has to be high entry barriers because the people who have to do it, everything has to be vetted in a right manner. So government also de-risks itself by taking only firms which are reputed, established, long history, have the ability to take risks and all those things. So yes, there are high entry barriers. So these are the things, some other words of caution which I can say for my fellow valuers. When you take these engagements, if you are keeping proper documentation in a normal engagements, please take care that you take 3x the care to take documentation well. Every instruction, every inception report, everything that you do has to be backed with solid documentation. No verbal instructions, no verbal data must be exchanged. Everything should be documented well because you have to leave an audit trail. You have to, because after this engagement, there will be CAG audit, there will be CBC audit, there will be 3 different types of audit. And one must be prepared for all that when you are taking this engagement, when you are starting to work. And you need to understand what is in public interest.
Shadab,
yes.
you have so much of things to
Sir,
say. I know. I think you must get at least 2 hours to speak.
Sir, I can speak on this for a long time, but I'll try to finish in maybe 1.5 minutes.
I'm just reminding you, I'm not disturbing.
Sir, thank you. I appreciate that, sir. So as I said, these are double-edged swords. Please go ahead and try them. These are wonderful to have. It builds reputation. It will prepare you. It will test you. You must do it, but be aware of all these things. Be aware you are custodian of public interest here. So while people will ask you to see in the interest of the deal, there will be a lot of pressures and pulls and push, but you have to hold fast and you have to do what your heart pleases, because finally it is your neck which is on the line here. You are the conscious keeper. you are holding the fiduciary responsibility here. I think I can go on and on, but these are wonderful engagements. Please try them. Thank you. I would love to answer any questions if
We
there are
have,
any questions.
yeah, we have question and session at the end of the entire session. Of course, there are one or two questions, but Rajiv, I tell you one thing. What you have been saying, I was just thinking all along that what I think that the person who takes on the challenges as an opportunity, he is a person who wins, and you are a sheer example of that. I congratulate you and I thank you for being here with us and sharing your experiences, informing the risks and threats a valuer has to may have to encounter while taking up such kind of assignments. But I tell you this, all the while I was just thinking about yourself, taking so much of challenges, taking so much on, and that is the winning point for you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, sir. I'll stay on for questions and answers. Thank you very much for it.
There's one, two questions we'll take up on later on. I think if you be there or you want to take up now.
Sir, I'll maybe join once more. I'll maybe take on. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Rajiv. And now I would like to call upon our President of Institution of Valuers, Mr. P.K. Tyagarajan ji. He has an experience of more than 30 years in sugar industry in India and African countries, along with special electrode manufacturing. He has been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by Rotary Club in 2013. He has presented a number of technical papers on valuation of sugar industries. In 2009, one was valuation that was in Hong Kong, Singapore, Beijing and India. He is also member delegate for technical discussions and Germany and Israel. He has been our president for quite a long, and his advices, his motivations, his blessings, his wishes, we all require. The entire institution of values is indebted to him, especially myself and my colleagues, Mr. Patel and Mr. Sachin, would agree with me. So, sir, please, just a few words from you, guiding principles. We are running short of time, please, sir. Remember, there's a lot of session now. Please, sir. Thank you. Sir, mute. You have to unmute your speaker, sir.
Now it's okay?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. Most respected General V.K. Singh, sir, today's chief guest, and had a nice talk to motivate all the values of our country. Then Dr. Saini, my friend Raju Shah, my colleagues Vinay Goyal, R.K. Patel, and Sachin Garg and Tanuj. In addition, David Neville. Good evening to all of you. Sir, value is the worth of something, whether it is important or non-important, as said in the beginning by the chief guest in his keynote address. Correct. Value has its value only if it is valued. Sir, here I would like to say something. Cost is a fact, price is the policy, value is an opinion. And at the same time, value varies with time and purpose. Today's most important topic for us, role of valuation in disinvestment. Sure, it is politics that is stemming disinvestment, but the crux of it all is valuation. A notable aspect is that theoretically all valuation methods are investor, that is buyer-oriented and not seller-oriented. And the assumptions of various valuation methods are based on what the rate of return the buyer will get and not what the seller is obtaining on his investment till date in the company, right? public sector units, which is up for grabs. It is important to understand that price is not value. In fact, the difference between price and value is the raison d'etre of investment valuation, independent of market pricing. The issue of valuation becomes increasingly important in case of a strategic scale as compared to public scale of public sector unit equity. Valuing companies in India becomes more difficult since there is no data bank in transactions carried out in the past that makes companies which other companies virtually impossible. The international experience on privatization is not very helpful in choosing an appropriate valuation method for disinvestment in public sector stocks, as no universally approved best method or model for discernment has emerged. No doubt, public scrutiny of valuation forecasts can neither be unequal nor assessed unequally. Again, nobody of experts can claim what would be the right value of selling a public sector unit stock. Nonetheless, what is perhaps more important is that not merely should the value derived be unquestionable on the basis of well-established equity valuation principles, but also the process of methodologies and underlying assumptions adopted for deriving such value be as well as seen to be valuable. Thank you, sir. I don't want to take much time. We would like to hear from R.K. Patel and Sachin Garg and David. Okay, go ahead. We will listen to them. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity given to me. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Tyagaraja ji. As usual, we have a lot of advices from you. May I call now? I would like to invite Mr. David Nevin Panna, who is a partner Deloitte LLP. Mr. David has close to 28 years of work experience spread across providing valuation advisory, transaction advisory, litigation support, and expert witness services, private equity, investing, rating opinions, project appraisals, and corporate finance. His clients include multinational corporations, multilateral institutions, and Indian companies in the private and public sector and government agencies. I welcome Dr. David Nevin Panna-ji, and for hearing your piece, experience in the field of valuation, where you have always been involved in such kind of projects. Thank you, sir. Please.
Thank you, Goel Saab, and thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister and Mr. Tyagarajan. It's a privilege that I'm here, and thank you for doing that. I think the topic that IOB has picked up is a very topical topic, and I heard Rajiv's presentation. I think given the Government of India's initiative in this area, I think it's a very, very topical kind of a session that we are having today. I think the agenda for the panel that we had, I think whether the fair valuation approach can drive a disinvestment strategy. Rather than sharing points on that, I will just share my experience as to one of the first disinvestments that Government of India did way back in early 2000 was ITDC hotels. So various hotels that they did, and I think the entire strategy around how the valuation needs to be approached was typically built around which of the most valuation methodology is appropriate as such. So at one point we had hotels which are operating. So was income approach the only strategy that is there? But the way this investment was structured, it was made into individual hotel companies and not really company as a whole. And then they allowed the bidders to, build whatever kind of hotels that, they could build. So the entire strategy around how the disinvestment and how do you approach it in strategy was built around all these fair valuation techniques itself. And they mentioned that you are fair with also, if you remember the hotels and in the Delhi and around areas, some of them are operating hotels, some of the hotels which were not operating and were poorly kind of need of a lot of renovation as such, which then drove towards a valuation methodology, which was more driven by the cost approach. And also there were a lot of deals that were happening around that point of time in the hotel industry. So, so depending on what is the strategy that you had in terms of whether you're disinvesting an operating asset or an asset which requires a lot of investments to grow it further, all your valuation techniques or all the way you approach it, differed as such. So when we are talking about disinvestments of companies or assets, we typically look at whether, they are winning companies, whether they are in a business which, hello, am I audible?
Go ahead.
You are audible, sir. You are
Sorry.
audible. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, depending on which kind of asset that one is disinvesting, one can take the leverage of which valuation methodology is going to be used as such. And then you look at as to whether that is, appropriate as such. And to go ahead with that. With this, I just, I would like to cover it in my Q&A sessions, because most of the things that are important and relevant in a disinvestment and evaluation approach as such, I saw that Rajiv had covered most of it. I would just add two more things. Actually, when we are doing valuation for disinvestment purposes, most of these deals come into scrutiny at a later date, and most of the people have a hindsight benefit. And as one of the speakers said, when you are disinvesting, you are always open to a charge that you're selling the family silver. So just to give you an example of the valuation, so the Nehru Place hotels, the reserve price by the government, if I remember the figures correctly, was about 67 crores. And the winning bid was 92 crores. And today, if you just were to go and do an asset valuation of that property, it would be possibly like 500 crores. So, as a valuer, you would be open to all that kind of indication that did you undervalue the asset in a fiduciary capacity as such. And that's very important. So I think with that, I'll just end what I had to say, and possibly I'll be happy to answer the Q&A session. Mr. Goel.
Thank you. Thank you, Pannaji. Nice to hear about your experiences in this particular field, disinvestment. And what you have really corroborated is to make our value fraternity about the responsibilities and the risk perceptions in this particular field, that is disinvestment. Thank you once again for joining and taking out your time. For us, all the fraternities indebted to you. Thank you. Thank you again. Now I would like to call upon Mr. R.K. Patel. Mr. R.K. Patel was Assistant Director, Gujarat Energy Development Agency, a state government body for promotion of renewable energy sources since 20 years. He is practicing as insurance surveyor and loss assessor, valuer, cost and management accountant, chartered engineer, and certified energy auditor. He has carried out valuations of large industries for various purposes like merger and acquisition, insurance, financial reporting, etc. He has published and presented more than 60 papers at various national as well as international journals and conferences. Amongst the valuers fraternity, Mr. Patel's introduction has, I don't find that I need to elaborate much. So now I would like Mr. Patel to please share his views and opinions and experiences regarding the disinvestments projects. Thank you. Thank you, Patel sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Vinayji, for introduction. And President sir, our chief guest, Dr. Singh, and other dignitaries sitting here in this webinar. Now, today's subject is very aptly chosen by the IOV RVF, that is the disinvestment, and what are the avenues and roles of valuers. the stalwarts have already spoken and showed that, okay, disinvestment, valuer has a very great role to play. But let me take up how the disinvestment takes place and how the valuers can play the role, and what are the challenges they may face. I would like to quote some of the practical case studies which I have read. Of course, I might not have dealt with. I have dealt with a couple of disinvestment issues, but it's a long process, and some disinvestment does not materialize, and it may result into liquidation also. But anyhow, the disinvestment is not a new thing as far as the public sector enterprises is concerned. You know that since 1990, this process is going on, and the terms you must be reading in the newspapers. There are liberalization, privatization, and globalization. All these are leading to one or the other way disinvestments or restructuring of public sector enterprises. Sometimes things are confused between privatization and disinvestment. So one should be very clear when he is dealing with the disinvestment and privatization. Privatization means the majority of the stacks government is partying with the public, or you can say with the other joint venture partners, and complete management goes to the private party, and government may keep the stack maybe up to 26% or up to, let us say, 49%. But the management is done by the private party, so that is called the privatization. Maybe 100% stack also government may sell it to the public, and it becomes 100% privatization. Public disinvestment means government parts with part of its equity to the public or to the joint venture or some other management, so that it adds to the competition and better management of the public sector enterprise. So this is the basic difference between privatization and disinvestment. Now, let us see the administrative mechanism, how the disinvestment takes place. The main department which deals with the disinvestment activities is Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, that is well known as DIPAM. So DIPAM is the department which carries out the process of disinvestment. And what is the disinvestment process now? Let us understand that. Normally, the public sector enterprises are falling under any of the ministry, which is called as an administrative ministry for that particular sector of public sector enterprise. So that is, and once that administrative ministry finds that, okay, this public sector enterprise needs to be disinvested or needs to be privatized, so that makes the proposal and it makes the appeal to the government, saying that yes, this particular enterprise is to be disinvested. So then that approval is given by Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs, and once it is approved by the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs, then it is going to the Interministerial Group, as I think somebody referred, that interministerial group will constituted, and then that will be represented by a number of ministries, maybe Finance Ministry, maybe Revenue Ministry, maybe tax departments, maybe other concerned ministries. So maybe defense also. So the interministerial group will take it further, and it will supervise. Then it will advise to the appointment of merchant bankers, or maybe kind of transaction advisories and all these things. So then these recommendations, presentation will be made by this this advisory or advisory agency maybe merchant banker or maybe some other party. So that will make the presentation before the high level committee on valuation, of course. So valuation becomes the key and pivotal point while carrying out the disinvestment. So then SCL, the high level committee, recommends to the price band and what will be the reserve price, and then or we can say the floor price. So this price will be declared and then proposals will be invited. And then once the competitive bid has been received, or that competitive bid, not necessarily that number of parties may take place. It may be strategic alliance also, strategic bid also. So and then approval will be given by the government for this investment. But here in public sector enterprises, you know, there are, as somebody said, that there is a long history. Maybe sometimes 50 to 60 years old public sector enterprises are existing, and there is a lot of employment and lot of assets which have been invested into. Lot of capital investments is there. Lot of land and lot of buildings and lot of plant machineries have been invested. They may or may not be utilized properly. Asset utilization may not be proper or may be underutilized. But because of the social responsibility, the government may be running it. So how much to disinvest? What to disinvest? What part of the enterprise should be disinvested and how much to disinvest? All these questions arise, and that ministerial group has to consider all these things. So you must be reading that the government is ready to part with, let us say, 26% of its stake in particular public sector, or maybe interested into parting with almost more than 50%, 51%. So management transfer. So that also happens. So it's all our strategic decisions government will take. And sometimes, no, some of the monopolist items, so that is also controlled by the government. So there also they have to be very strategic where to disinvest, how to disinvest. And there are various methods of valuation. Now valuation, as I said, that is a pivotal. So there are various methods, and you know that there are standard methods because we all are trained for international valuation standards. So whatever name you give, income approach, cost approach, or market approach, all these are very well dealt in our international valuation standards, and we all are equipped with international valuation standards. So question arises for the particular application for a particular kind of disinvestment. Okay, some disinvestments may be asset intensive. Some disinvestments may be market intensive, marketing kind of assets, and some kind of assets may be operational assets. So all these are to be considered by the valuer, and which method is to be applied. Let me take some of the examples that there are methods of disinvestments. One is the divestiture, means government parts with these investments to the public, maybe by public offering. So the government says that okay, it is ready to sell it off, let us say 10% of its equity in particular enterprise to the public. Then the public offer is made, and at some bid price or maybe at premium or maybe a discount, the public is offering those investment. That is how public is taking part into the debt. In that case, government may or may not lose the management. Government is still continuing the management of those enterprises, but with say the public investment is there, government becomes more cautious in that. And then sometimes of it is a direct private investment, direct private sale to the management which has expertise on running this kind of assets. So that is there. And then sometimes new private investments are also taking place. Management buyout, that also happens. So government is not parting up with 100% of the equity, but maybe losing control by disinvesting about 51% of the stake from the public sector, and management is handed over to some other management who has proficiency in running this kind of assets and having good network of marketing and whatever you say. So in that case, government is not losing on earnings of the public sector, but at the same time improving the efficiency of the But sometimes no, that is not possible to disinvest. In that case, some of the assets are such, they are better to liquidate. So in that case, liquidation also takes place of some of the enterprises. There are some examples of some public sectors having created number of subsidiaries, and subsidiaries are especially for supply of raw materials or maybe selling of their finished products to the public. So in that case, this chain of supply is managed by subsidiaries. In that case, subsidiaries may not be operating efficiently. In that case, that may be either privatized or maybe disinvested or maybe liquidated. So, and lastly, the government goes for auction. So, and then another is the non-disinvesture. In that case, what happens? There are operational aspects which are considered. So, in that case, for example, no, that infrastructure projects like toll roads and all these things. So they are normally operational aspects where the operational licenses are given to those kind of companies, or what you can say special vehicles, special purpose vehicles. So they are created by the private sector, and the government gives them the license to run for certain years, and profit is shared by government and the public or private company. Yeah. Then what is the role of valuers? Valuers' role is very, very important, because most of the public sectors you might have come across, they are asset intensive. So all said and done, their final valuation will be based on the share value. But share value is also dependent on the asset value, that is the tangible asset value. For example, if you go for petrochemical industry, then it is capital intensive, where assets have been invested hugely, and assets are to be managed effectively to optimize the profitability. Ultimately, it affects the share value of those public sector enterprises. But still, those assets hold the value. Sometimes, no, in the share value, the weightage of tangible assets may be more than 60 to 70%. So in that case, the asset valuers, tangible asset valuers, play a very, very important role. And in that case, their role is becoming very crucial. Just financial valuers or enterprise valuers are compiling all these things and ultimately giving the share value, where the assets are constituting more than 70% of the value in the shares. So in that case, net asset value method becomes very, very, very important. So asset valuers' role is very important, and they have to do a lot of due diligence. Due diligence is a technical due diligence about the availability of the material, transportation facilities, and lot many things, so that they can effectively apply HABU, that is highest and best use of the assets. As our chief guest mentioned, that valuers are the people who can suggest that how the best utilization of assets can take place. So this is where the asset valuers come into picture rather than financial valuers. First asset valuers come into the picture, and sometimes personal activities, functional, whether the assets are functionally well or not, whether the assets under valuation are operational, properly operating or not, how old they are, how obsolete they are, how improvements can be made, and what best production can be brought out. All this can be a very important role of the asset valuers. And then collection of information, and then information is also to be due diligent. So asset valuers have to do very, very important job in this case. Yeah. Just I will take 2 minutes and then, yeah. Give me 2 minutes and then I will finish it up. Yeah. Am I audible, no?
The time is running out.
Just give me 2 minutes to sum up. Okay. Yeah. As that is very good example of Balco, wherein there was all these threads have been discussed by Rajiv ji regarding political issues, and then challenging the valuations as undervaluation, or maybe some time of leakage of valuation. All these allegations are going to be there. These are the challenges. But since we company and registered valuers are well equipped, well trained, and having good kind of code of conduct, and well trained with international valuation standards and all kinds of methodologies, and with continuous education program, I think we valuers can take the challenges of taking disinvestment valuations. And I wish all the success to the valuers who are prepared to take up these kind of assignments. Don't get afraid of any kind of situation, because challenges are always going to be there, and when there are challenges, you are going to learn a lot many things. Unless you take the challenges, you are not going to excel. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Patel Sahab. Every positivity has a negativity, and the negativity has a positivity. So
Yes.
our Patel Sahab has always been a very positive person all along. His personality reflects the positivity itself. Thanks for your sharing. I know nobody can stop you really while explaining the detail. You want to share your entire experience, but time is short, you know very well. But of course, in the coming days, we would be keeping an exclusive the webinar on the disinvestment for all three classes of assets separately. That's what I look for. So now let me invite our Mr. Sachin Garg of GA to share his experiences with the fellow valuers. Mr. Sachin Garg is the managing partner GA Advisory, and is a council member of IOB. Not to mention that he is the youngest of all the council members in our council, and a national speaker on subject of valuation for financial reporting, compliance, taxation, mergers and acquisitions, bank mortgage, and insolvency and bankruptcy code. He has major experience of leading the team on valuation of big industries such as Jayaprakash Associates Limited, ERA Infrastructure Limited, Ruchi Soya Limited, Punj Lloyd Limited, etc. So I would say that we are going to hear a very good experience of a young bidding valuer. Welcome, Sachin.
Thank you so much, Vinay sir. And I would want to thank everyone on the panel for giving this opportunity to have my experience shared with you. Since the time is short, I'll just divide my talk on two parts. One is for all the budding valuers, how to attain a position where you can have a mandate one, for disinvestment. And second part would be my experience with the engagements which are done in disinvestment. So first of all, we should understand that disinvestments are of assets which are owned by the government of India. And there is a very strict eligibility criteria. So if you want to get into it, you have to start working today. Because as I understand valuation in fraternity, we all are working in individual capacities. We are working in silos. And whenever there is a requirement, the eligibility criteria has to be met. So if you think of having a mandate for disinvestment, you should start working today. And in a period of at least 10 to 12 years, you will reach that point where you'll be able to meet the eligibility criteria. So eligibility criteria primarily is a function of what is the total turnover. The current government, the turnover is close to about 5 CR plus, So depending upon what mandates the government is selling, the turnover increases. So something that you should be ensured, the target should be that you should be able to achieve that kind of a turnover for last 2 to 3 years. You should be able to show it to the government. Secondly, would be the kind of assignments you have done. So you should be open to all the assignments in these 10 years of your career to take up as big as assignments as possible. The money should not be the criteria, because if the money is the criteria, then probably you will lose the band. Once you attain these criteria, then you will be eligible to bid for engagements. Of course, you should have a team of at least 20-25 people under you who are experienced of at least 4 to 5 years experience each, so that whenever these assignments come, you can deploy the team at the site and they can function in a parallel manner. It is not a one-man job. You have to have a team parallelly deployed at different locations, different sites, having a correct skill set. So you have to have a skill set of a land and building person, at least 3 to 4 years. You should have a person who has an experience of plant and machinery, at least 3 to 4 years. And then of course, financial assets also. So once you have that capacity built up, then only you can actually bid for the engagements. Now, what are the challenges that come? Till date, we have been functioning on 3 to 4 engagements, disinvestment. And fortunately, Rajiv was able to achieve a conclusion, to few assignments. But in our case, none of the assignments got closed. And as the luck would have it, we had to invest from our own pocket for all the travel costs, all the hotels. We had to visit same site multiple times. The reason being, there is a union bazi, a very good case I can take the name of the engagement also. It was Bharat Pumps. When our team went there was camp set outside the main premises. I'm sorry, all the, so the main topic was the methodology of valuation, but I'm trying to share my experience because the time is too short to talk about methodologies, because methodology is a big, probably in the next session, when we decide, we can have a discussion on methodologies. So Bharat Pump was a very classic example. When our team went there, there was a camp set up by all the people outside who are workers there. They were sitting there for at least 2 days because they came to know that our team would be traveling there. When our team reached there, they started shouting slogans. There was threat given to us. And unfortunately, we were not able to enter the premises because there was no security made available to us. So our team decided a conscious call that, the situation might go out of hand. So we decided to call it off. The next time when the meeting happened with the secretary at Delhi, so he insisted that the police protection should be given, advance notice to be given, and all the machinery should be mobilized at a state level to ensure the security and safety of all the professionals who will be going there. Next time, again, we traveled to the site. Again, we had to incur all the expenses. This time, the security was there, but we felt it was not adequate. Still, we went inside the premises where, we would require a sufficient time for an investigation, for an inspection of the machineries, the site, the land, the building. It was not there. It was just a mere formality where we just entered the premises and did the inspection. So the total site was about 110 acres, but the plant and machinery was only to the tune of 20 acres. The balance was a non-core asset which needs to be shelved off. Like they have a policy for selling the non-core assets to monetize it separately than to the core assets, which is making money. The idea here is that to all my professional valuers, that who wants to enter into it, is a good kick. It gives you very high, when you have these mandates. But mentally, you have to be prepared for investing from your own pocket. These mandates will never ever give you money. Mandates which give you money is a natural bank mortgages, bank valuations for restructuring, for mergers, for acquisitions, for financial reporting or IBC cases. But when you talk of disinvestment, it's more of an investment that goes from your pocket and you don't make money. Monetarily gains are not there, but the gains are towards different side where your credibility increases in the market. You get a visibility, your organization, you yourself will get a visibility in the market where it helps you more to get further mandates. So my request to all the professional valuers fraternity who are logged in right now, who are looking as a career and for whom valuation is bread and butter, it is not something which is alternate to what they do today. So it should be your primary job, profession, and you should be very passionate about this valuation, and you should be very truth and working integrally towards this profession. And then only you should take this disinvestment assignments and you should target these assignments. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm okay for any question and answer session, sir.
Sachin, and you have raised certain questions regarding the tendering process of the biddings, which are very be taken care of giving me a lot of inputs regarding how to go about with the government. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay. To giving me a lot of inputs to be working with the government regarding those things. Now, I think our all sessions are complete, and thanks Sachin for your wonderful opinions about the tendering process and all that, so that people know about the nitty-gritties of the tendering process to go around. And let me introduce our Mr. Tanuj Kumar Bhatnagar ji, who is there. Now we are coming to now summing up and closing. So before that, we would take up our few questions we have received. And since all panelists are there, so it's better that whosoever wants to speak, he can speak and elaborate. So can we start, Tanuj?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with the panel. And let us start with the first question that has come. I think it has come for Mr. Rajiv Shah. Rajiv ji, the question is that why KPMG, PYC, and all these big four have accepted the disinvestment assignments for ₹1. I mean, it doesn't even cover the guarantees demanded by the DIPAM, which says that you have to give a guarantee of 10% of your fee. So why such pricing?
Sir, it's quite obvious. While it is not for me to answer why they did it, I'm sure they are the better people on whom this question can be addressed. I can only guess. And my guess is that, sir, which is quite obvious, is that everyone is looking to these are reputational engagements. And I think, as others have already so said, someone wanting to come up the league table in investment banking, or someone wanting to build a certain credentials. So while technical credentials are very, very important, but if all the 5 firms have equally good technical credentials, the only way to win it is by quoting loan. And so this is what, these are hyper competitive situations. And while it is not good for the profession as such, but that's what is happening. So I think the answer is better for others to answer this.
I think Sachin has given one reason for that. That one would like to be in a league of such big investment valuations and all. So one would like to enter and ask for a minimal of the fees. And of course, ₹1 looks very absurd, but there are other avenues open for a person to come into that disinvestment valuation, like Sachin said, and like you have also mentioned, that they come to be known in the market that, well, they are the most reliable and the most economical people to deal with. I think that may be the reason for that. So that's another question, please.
Yeah. The next question, as you can see on the screen, is that any individual who has sufficient experience, passed the exams, and has reasonable empanelment, worked as on senior positions like chief engineers. Why is it that there's a criteria of turnover? So I think you had specifically mentioned it in your session, and Sachin also threw some light on it. But for the benefit of our audience, could you please retell that? Why 5 crore turnover criteria?
So is it to me, Tanuj?
Yeah, it is to you and Sachin.
And others also, where they can everybody.
I'll tell you. So, what I believe that, we live in a very materialistic world. The way a person is ascertained is what is his turnover, and you might be a very intelligent person, you might be very ethical, you might be very working with very morally, you may be very correct. But point here is that when such a big mandates are given by the government, how do they ascertain? your credibility is established technically by your qualifications, your professional accreditations, but also by your turnover. So if you have a certain level of turnover, that means you have certain experience and expertise of a very recent past. They ask for turnover of last 3 to 4 years. So just imagine a company, a small time Indian firms maintaining a turnover of 4 to 5 crores for last 3 to 4 years is what the criteria is, So there is no other yardstick available by the government, and that is what I believe. In case some other yardstick is given to them, maybe an IBBI registered company, maybe could be a yardstick, all 3 asset classes. Maybe your technical credentials could be one yardstick, but they always keep this yardstick of a financial turnover. So I don't know, but that's how it is.
Okay, now third, this is an open question. I think it is not on the screen. It is, can a non-registered valuer value these companies which are open for disinvestment? Can a non-registered valuer participate in these biddings?
Registered under IBBI, you
Yeah.
say. Non-registered
No.
under IBBI can, as per the law, can he value the company as such? So it is on open questions, anybody can.
Any
So
of
there-
the
So there is no bar at the moment. Even if you read the government minutes, see, IBBI registration is only required for the company law or insolvency related matters. Other than that, IBBI registration is actually not required. So technically, if you take a strict interpretation of that, then it is possible for any non-IBBI registered valuer to also bid for disinvestment cases, provided they fulfill the other eligibility criteria.
Yeah.
But it is better to have one, because why take risk?
Then the criteria is they have to judge on the basis of the 3 years of your returns regarding.
So that is only one of the criteria. Sir, there are two. There is a difference between eligibility and selection.
That is actually selection. Criteria.
Eligibility establish the bare minimum that is required for you to bid for it.
Bid for it, but the selection criteria.
The selection criteria are much tougher than that.
Yes.
So they will say, "Theek hai, if there are 5 firms with 5 crores, then whom do you want to select?" So that is in more subjective, is effectively in their hands. So eligibility is the bare minimum, and selection is actually the game starts after that. So that's my understanding.
But do you think, Rajeevji, that if there is a one individual valuer, and as for the company rules are concerned, they permit you to take the expert opinion from another registered valuer of another asset class and do the assignment. So should it be restrictive to that in such cases where only the companies or LLPs or partnership firms are allowed? I agree with the requirement, as Sachin has also elaborated, and that at least 20-25 staff strength should be there with a valuer. But if individual or proprietorship firm or something like that, if they have the requisite arrangement to assess any asset, so isn't it better that the more of the such kind of arrangements should be promoted by the government in their tender, or they should open it up?
Government is in fact asking not to do it. Reason is, how do they pinpoint the responsibility? If you give work to someone certified by a third guy, and these are all associates, so the biggest problem with government is how do we nip you down? Who is finally responsible? So if such a distributed responsibility is given, then it becomes a challenge for them also. Who is the person who is responsible? So that is a challenge. So typically their intention is to give it to a firm which meets all the criteria. If one individual can meet all these criteria, so be it. But if a distributed relationship or distributed professional responsibility doesn't actually work from their perspective.
I mean, that's what I want to say, that exactly, you are absolutely right. But suppose there is a proprietorship firm and he engages other experts as per the law. So don't you think that it should be in?
Is allowed. That is very hazardous for that professional. Reason is, sir, he will be taking responsibility now by law. He will be able to take risk. Suppose a land and building valuer takes up the engagement. He engages a plant and machinery and SFA valuer but eventually he will be bearing the risk of their work, where he does not, neither has the qualification nor the expertise to take that risk. So whether that is wise for him or not, that's maybe only he can decide.
So Sachin wants to say.
I would like to add to this. What happens that in case you want to ensure good quality work, then you have to have your own team under you working so that there is a quality check that can be kept. What happens that there are about 10 locations which I have to visit. So there is an assignment where there are about 22 locations which I have to visit. Land building, plant machinery and SFA, inventory. All 22 locations, if I have to visit in the country, different states, different cities, different districts, how do I keep a check on the quality? Because different people have different mindset, they have different working style. So if you have to converge everything together and be a responsible person to be able to present to the board that this is what the valuation is, you have to have your own team.
Oh, I would like to hear from Patel sir also regarding this.
See, it is right that, okay, criteria is always there anywhere, not only in the disinvestment issues, even in any of the valuation assignments given, big assignments, given by the public sector. So they are fixing some kind of minimum criteria. Okay. And one of the criteria is turnover. And second criteria is that you should have a team of the people and you have to prove yourself technically that, okay, you have this team and they are committed to these particular assignments if assigned to that particular organization or that firm. So this is going to be there. Okay. And